a little while ago now, I had a chat with a gentleman named Dave Huxtable. He messaged me on Discord and he was like, hey, want to have a chat? And I was like, sure, we should put it on YouTube. And he was like, yeah. And so that's what we done. The first part is up on Dave's channel, but you can kind of go in between them as you want. There's not a lot of continuity that'll need to be there. But yeah, we just had a big chat about linguistics and we talked about what we think about languages. Here it is.
And you know, the whole of phoneme theory is based on the fact that everyone they ever asked spoke an alphabetic language with an alphabetic writing system. It's like, okay, so you have R's in your head. Where did you get those from? I think you got those from learning to read. Was learning to read easy? No, it was not. So, like the young man who is responsible for these is, has learned English pretty damned well, but is struggling learning to read. He's 4. Learning to read is weird. Segmentation is weird. It's not what human brains are good at.
There's also the thing of like marginal phonemes and like allophones that kind of get phonemicized and everything. In languages that don't have writing, I feel like that's a lot more common. Like you get phonemes kind of drifting in and out of each other.
Yeah, because people have never been told what kind of thing it was. When I was living in China in the 80s, and the hospital I was working at got an electronic typewriter. And so you could type in pinyin, and it would then come up on the screen with a choice of characters that were pronounced like that, and you could choose it. And I said, oh, can I borrow it? I'm writing an article. And they said, yeah, can we watch you use it? And it was like, yeah. And there's all these Chinese brain surgeons. I say, how can you do that? I can't do that. How do you know? And they were trying to do the segmentation. I was like, okay, pin, per year, like my grandson tries to do. It was very difficult because they don't do it. Because their writing system doesn't do it.
Yeah, and
people now can
natural.
because they've used their phones since they were 6. But back then they'd learnt pinyin when they were 6, and then hadn't used it since, and so didn't do alphabetisation.
I wonder if there's like a generational gap now between people who can segment and people who can't segment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the people who can't must find it really difficult to use a phone. Yeah, so something we have in common is the lack of an R sound in that sentence, but I think the difference is a bit too subtle to start with. I'm not sure it's the best example. So I've got a question, okay? If I was to parachute into Australia, into enemy-occupied Australia, and I had to pass as a native, what would they be able to have me on?
One thing you've gotta be careful of is the length of your diphthongs. Because in my accent, you can hear a very big difference in the length of the first component of the diphthongs and the second component, like between the pairs, right? Because you've got the 3 pairs of symmetrical diphthongs and oi, which is a dumb diphthong, and it's French, and I don't respect it. So let's focus on the main 3. You've got the top pair, which is fleece and goose, and the main emphasis is all on the second component. But then you've got the middle pair, face and goat, where there's a bit more emphasis on either end, and then price and mouth. Especially in my accent, there's hardly a second component. And it kind of goes across the continent as you go down the pairs, there's more emphasis on the first component. And when you get to price and mouth, the second component's practically inaudible to a lot of people. Down, kind of goes. The Aussie accent you're doing kind of sounds old-fashioned in some way. I can't put my finger on.
Well, I mean, one of the things, going back to, oh my God, the occupiers have got me now, but one of the things, I was kind of disappointed when you were talking about the shift, because the one that I really like is that very raised kit vowel.
Yeah.
And you were saying that young people don't do that anymore.
Not so much, but it is still, as I'm saying, the anti-clockwise vowel shift is very allophonically conditioned, and there's like the default values of those vowels are shifting around, but there are allophonic preservations of the old values. And if I say like finger or like, if I say like, I don't know, bib or hip or like hip or something like that, I've got a really kind of low centralized I. I've measured it like formants, and my I is level with my or. And so it's very, very been brought down. But if I say like finger, finger, it's the next to V, like kick.
Yeah.
Like kick the bib. You can hear the allophonic difference with the I before velars, and then
so it's the
everywhere else.
The velarity of the eng.
Yeah, exactly. The velar, like any sort of velar consonant next to an I, brings it back up to the original spot.
But I'm probably old enough to be able to say kit.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say if you're an Australian, you could get away with saying kit.
Good.
You've also got to watch out for your final plosives.
Oh yeah. Oh, what's wrong with me final?
We aspirate our final plosives to the level that Irish people do, because that's where we got it
that's
from.
That's where you got them. It's like, look, that's where we
got our final plosives from.
Great guys, thank you, Ireland. We've got some plosives now.
Yeah.
So kit.
Yeah, kit, and cap, and buck.
So me and Dave actually had two chats, one of which was over video, which you just seen, and then the other one of which was also on video. It's just that the video didn't end up being recorded. So we've got one which has got, us two sitting there, and then there's another one which I'll be cutting to in a second, which has no video. So I'm going to be putting up graphics on the screen, and if ever I don't have an idea for a graphic to put up, I'm just going to take a leaf out of an anonymous other linguistics YouTuber's book and put some like nature footage up on there for you. Enjoy that.
Something I'm really curious about is the trap-bath split.
Yeah. The trap-bath split is kind of being a little bit marked. It's heard as posh by a lot of people. And in Australia, posh is not desirable. You don't want to be seen as posh in Australia, unless you are already posh, but those people suck.
Unless you can't help it, I suppose,
Unless you can't help it, but those people suck. We don't like them.
I think it's the same in Britain. But interestingly, because in the southeast everyone has the split, people in the north think, you say Bath, you're posh, and it's like, no, I'm actually, I'm a market trader or whatever,
exactly.
But not posh.
Like I'm a farmer. I was born on a cattle station. I'm a cattle farmer by trade. And I used to say France and dance and chance. And this also happened to all of my sisters before me. When we went into boarding school in the city, where social pressures mess everything up, we all got reprogrammed to say dance in France, because people would hear us say, I'm going to the dance, and they were like, oh, you're going to the dance, are you?
Yeah. But
we all got retrained.
Is it the nasal that makes that long?
It's the nasal, because we're reprioritizing the bad lad split, kind of like nasal tensing, over the trap bath split. I think it's a sort of a reprioritization, and it might be due to American influence. But I'm not so certain about that, because there's always been variability in whether or not the trap bath split got applied to those vowels, ever since the very start of Australian English. If you look back to Alexander J. Ellis, he republished a pamphlet in the existing phonology of English dialects, which included the word dance in an Australian accent.
Oh, wow.
And it has the same vowel as in hand. And it's, even back then, it's raised a little bit and lengthened.
Yeah, because one of the things that people said about my most recent one was no one says example. And
example.
Do they say example? Because that doesn't sound Australian to me.
Example.
But not short.
I would never say example.
Yeah,
example
which is like in the
sounds
north of
distinctly
England.
English to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Example.
Bath.
Can't think of any example for that. But we have got example. We have got a long R, but not with a short A.
But it can be a long A.
It can be a long A, and it can be a long R.
Right.
Yeah.
So all these people that criticise, they said you're either you sound like you're either from Adelaide or you went to a posh school. So there you go. So you're either posh or from Adelaide.
Yeah, Adelaide or like some parts of the East Coast or posh. That's when you find the trap bath split extended to pre-nasal contexts. That's the main place, because Adelaide was settled quite a few decades later than all the rest of the Australian capitals.
Yeah.
And that was also all entirely free colonists. Unlike every other capital, Adelaide's entirely free colonists, and quite a few decades later than all the others.
Again, because they were just exposed to the changes that were going on in England?
I would believe so, yeah. Yeah.
Because I can't imagine, I mean, the convict or free thing, they would have been mostly working class people.
I would assume so, yeah.
You know, you get a few people who say, right, I've bought this country that we've stolen off a group of people,
Yeah.
and now I'm going to go there and oversee my vast territories where all of the working class people and other people that I've indentured.
Yeah.
But you can't imagine many posh people.
I presume most posh people would have thought about it like Oscar Wilde did, where it's just sort of some vague outskirt of civilization, which is hell on earth.
Yeah, because I mean, the first people on Mars are going to be going there for an opportunity. Gosh, you get to. It's going to be tough, but you get to keep some stuff.
Yeah, they're just going to be some enterprising individuals.
So imagine, I don't know who's occupying the continent at the moment, but imagine they have this list of shibboleths that they're going to test me on.
Yeah.
What would they be?
Definitely words like family and example that I talked to you about with ash lengthening.
Okay, so give me a sentence.
An example of a family.
An example of a family.
Because you could never say an example of a family with a short in each word. So it's got to be an example of a family.
So the
If you want to be posh or from Adelaide, you can say example of a family.
No, I'm going to go for the. So the Sullivans are a great example of a family.
Yes, you've got to you've got to raise your ash a bit more.
Right. Okay.
Because you said family with
a great example
more of a
of a family.
Yes, that was getting there. The O and O phonemes, they're becoming different phonemes in Australia, especially because of L-Vocalisation.
Do you get mergers before L-Vocalisation? So
absolutely, we got a lot of mergers over here. We've
We've got feel and fill.
Feel and fill in some people, not so much over here. I haven't heard it over here, but we've got an emerging one between HAL and HOWL, Hal and Hal. That's an emerging one that's becoming more of a thing. It's right on the fringe though. More established ones are whole and haul, which I don't have. HOLE and HALL. Whole and haul.
They're different. So for me that would be whole, which is the same as HULL.
Yeah.
And haul, which pretty much that's just haul. Oh, hang on. Oh, that could, there isn't a word, but pull. So pull the name, pull the thing you swim in, and pull the handle.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think the pull and pull is an emerging one as well. I haven't got a lot of them because I didn't grow up vocalizing my L's, but I'm getting them as I've moved into the city. And DOLL, DOLE, and DULL, those are all sort of merging together.
Yeah, they're definitely merged for me. Dull, and dull. But it's interesting that some of those mergers before L-Vocalisation are only happening now in Australia, whereas they happened a long time ago in London. So that must have not been very advanced.
Yeah, L-Vocalisation it's been here for a long time, but it's become a lot more general in the last few generations. Do you know whenabouts L-Vocalisation developed in England?
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that was what I'm trying to guess, really. That, you know, if people took kind of proto-L-Vocalisation with them to Australia, only some of them, but then all the merging happened in England after they'd gone. It's like, all right, those people have gone, we can really go to town on this now. Dull.
That's what I'm thinking, because we've got more L-Vocalisation in Western Australia and South Australia. That's the main two areas that are victims of it, I suppose. But we've also got it's emerging on the West Coast.
Was Western Australia colonised later?
A little bit later, yeah, but not a huge amount. In the family tree of Australian cities, Perth and Adelaide are like sort of sisters and the rest are cousins.
Okay. Another one that I mentioned to you in comment was you'd talked about Winder.
Yeah, yellow and window.
I think, hang on. There was a tongue twister that I knew as a kid that was red lorry, yellow lorry.
Yeah.
But it was red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry.
Yeah, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry.
And it's definitely yellow. And then Winder. Definitely my grandparents said Winder, and I think I said Winder as a kid.
Yeah.
And there's a song by, what's that guy? Northern English guy that plays the ukulele. Where he's being a window cleaner.
I didn't know that kind of person existed.
It was a long time ago. But he's got a song, When I'm Cleaning Windows.
Yeah.
So I reckon Winder probably used to be standard. And...
Well, this is where our good friend Alexander J. Ellis comes
what
back
does he
into
say?
it.
What does he say?
I did a little survey a little while ago. I wanted to see, okay, so reducing the final O to is a thing in different dialects nowadays. So I wanted to see the geographic distribution of it in the existing phonology of English dialects. So whether it was more common in certain parts of the Midlands or the South or something like that, that would allow it to spread to places in the US and Australia and all that. I looked through the word lists that he takes of all the different dialects, and I made a map of exactly which regions, what their proportion was of O to in the last vowels of those words. I was like making up a map of the distribution, and it was a very bad map in the end because there was not a single non-London dialect that didn't reduce them to In every single word list, even way up into Scotland, they were all reduced to And so it seems to have been fully universal prior to that.
Because I think I would have guessed that Winder and yellow were kind of pretty much across the board, but then that middle class people would say yellow to sound posh, not realising that posh people don't say that. But that would have been my guess.
Yeah.
Because you get posh people who used to say things like hunting. There's that class you're hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the middle class says, oh, but it's got a G in it. We must say it in case anyone we meet his lordship on the path, and then we can impress him by our Gs.
Meet his lordship on the path. What an English concept.
Hello, have you been hunting, your lordship? Yeah, right, yes, hunting and fishing, that's what I do.
Hunting and fishing, indeed. It reminds me of Maine English, because you get the same... that's the only place I've really heard as much where you've got reduction of ing to in, but without the weak vowel merger.
Seems though most of these stories have been about the coast and seafaring, so I'll have to tell you one about login.
So you've still got that really strong in at the end, like hunting and fishing and chicken. Chicken's that's a noun.
I've yes, I've been hunting and fishing and chicken recently. Yeah.
Hunting and fishing for chickens.
I think people do.
It's like how people used to say mutting.
Especially in the Midlands, people are hypercorrect and would say chicking and guarding.
Yeah, chicking and guarding and mutting.
Yeah, I was in the guarding.
In the guarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the chickens.
It reminds me of my I was playing tennis one time. I don't know why I said it, but I said something like I was being guided, but my natural price vowel is so monophthongal that they thought they said I was being guarded. Okay. And that was when I realised, oh, that's going to monophthong. That's where that vowel's headed. That's going to monophthong.
Interesting. So it's wonderful that you got this feel of how the accent is how various accents are changing. Are they becoming less homogenous?
Well, that's the thing. Is I used to think that they're all sort of converging, and then I found out that it's more to do with regional centres. You're not like getting a Penrith accent and a London accent aren't necessarily getting more similar, but a Penrith accent and a Newcastle accent are getting more similar, and a London accent and a Bristol accent are getting more similar. Yeah. That kind of like the regions are sort of forming together into more homogenous regions rather than all of it homogenizing. But then I've seen the most innovation in modern English dialects in African American English. Those sort of regional dialects in the United States, that's where I see the most innovation happening, even in like Gen Z people with new new phenomena coming about. That's where I've seen it the most.
TH fronting is spreading, I think, first among working class men in various parts of the country. So you get it in parts of Yorkshire, you get it in Manchester, you get it in Glasgow. None when you didn't ever used to have it.
Yeah.
And T localization and all of those kind of London things. Or ex-London things, because they're not in MLE. But
Yeah.
So they're kind of spread out from London things. And you can kind of see that as this kind of, blokes thinking that it's manly to say thing. I'm a man, I'm a real man, I say thing. I'm bar.
That's such a silly sound for an Australian. It sounds so deeply silly. It sounds like a toddler.
An American said that to me once. You all sound like toddlers.
Yeah. You all sound like toddlers. Oh God. The TH fronting is in Perth. I don't know how. I don't know when or how or what, but a lot of my friends my age who are guys are TH fronting. I don't know what it is. It's got to be some kind of parallel evolution thing.
And it's also guys that do it, so maybe it is that kind of.
Yeah.
I'm going.
And
to
it's
be
also
manly.
The guy I told you about, Jim from Carnarvon. He says in the sample of his speech on the website, he says south at a river, where he does TH fronting and TH stopping in the same, flaps the TH both in the same sentence. And that's he was born in the 60s or 70s or somewhere at some time around then.
Does Ellis say anything about TH fronting?
I don't recall it being in there particularly.
Because it's another one of those things where you'd think if they did it, they would have taken it to Australia.
Well, here's the thing with... I talk about this in my Roticity video as well. If you look at dialects of all over the south of England in the 1800s, it's not hard to come across accents which you'll read the phonetic transcription and be like, this is an Australian. This is just Australian diphthongs. There's one from Kent which seems like you read it and you see very Australian diphthongs, and another one from Bedford, I think. Maybe Bedford or somewhere around there. And those are just two examples that I've seen, but there's got to be more in the book of this pattern of the diphthongs where mouth starts at dress and price starts at lot, and then both face and goat start at a low central spot. The Australian system of diphthongs, which I think is the most defining thing about us, is set up in a very similar way to a lot of other rural accents in kind of the southeast and south of England at the time. So... And it just so happens that it's mainly accents like Cockney that are the popular survival of that pattern. But I think in reality, there's a lot less London specific influence than people might think, because like I said in the video, H dropping isn't common here. It is for me because I'm from a spot that does have it just by the whims of fate. But amongst most Australians, we don't drop our H's, at least anymore. And that's always been sort of a less common thing here than in England, because it was probably marked when it came over, just like Roticity. They were in the dialect leveling scenario when they were first, or when the council all got together and decided how Australians should talk, that thing. They probably all saw H dropping and Roticity as less desirable, uneducated things. And so, London, a lot of broader London features would have gone extinct.
Yeah. Less desirable cool kid things. Because if you've got a very small population, and you've got the adults all speaking however they used to speak, but then the kids that were born on the ships and the kids that were born in the early colonies, who were more prone to dialect levelling, what features did they like? And and what was the cool clique that decided that they were going to keep H's? And
it was mostly in urban areas as well, because you see, and this is my favourite bit of Ellis's description of Australian English, you can see he mentions that in rural parts of Australia, you can find regional British accents surviving because there's been no influence from peers or schoolmasters.
Yeah.
And so you'll still get Scottish brogue having survived out in the bush. So it would have mostly been in the cities where there would have been a lot more opportunity for social pressures like class mobility.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you were saying, where they're still in contact, where there's still ships coming from the UK, and there's school teachers coming in and saying snobby things about mad stuff about let's make the grammar like Latin, and I mean you get these interesting pockets. I'm fascinated by the pockets. So like there's a town in Mexico where they speak kind of 19th century Venetian dialect, and then there's all these blonde, blue-eyed farmers that are driving tractors and speaking Venetian.
Yeah. God, that's cool when a dialect goes off to some random place and gets kept there for a bit. I think there was an example of that with Australians. Like some 1800s Australians went out to Argentina, probably, some South American country, and they set up there. And then there's this video on YouTube, if I'm remembering correctly, if I'm not just getting my whole story mixed up, I feel like there's a video on YouTube of some very old man talking with a kind of mixed accent of like Australian English and Portuguese or Spanish or whatever the Substrate is.
Yeah.
And it's like preserved 1800s Australian English, and it doesn't sound that different.
But look here, I never played cards, I never went to horse races, I never been to football yet, and I don't intend to. I have a swig, I have a smoke, I hunt, and I fish.
Yeah, and you get. I mean, there's Cornish communities in Mexico as well, where I mean, they're totally assimilated, but they eat these things called pastes.
Yeah, and the Patagonian Welsh.
The Patagonian Welsh. I must go to Patagonia. I must learn Welsh and then go to Patagonia.
Yeah, and then not be able to talk to them.
And not be able to talk to them. Yeah, no, I do love that idea of kind of, those isolated communities and how they speak. And just that thing, like, what happens, the transplanted languages and how they change, how they're preserved.
I've been very interested recently in, I don't know how to say it properly, Tristan da Cunha.
I think,
one of them.
I'm an expert on pronouncing that, so I should tell you that you got it right, yeah.
They've got their crazy accent down there. They've got their crazy, not even identifiable. It's not even one of those things where you can be like, oh, that sounds a bit Irish, or that sounds a bit West Country. It's just like, goodness gracious, what am I hearing right now? in Tristan da Cunha. I want to make a video on that accent so bad.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of that, and interviewing the local policeman. I don't know if you've seen the same one, where he's
I've seen that one.
Amazing accent. And there is that thing. So what you were saying about Cockney, and I think Simon Roper has alluded to this recently, and I call it the chicken phenomenon.
The weak vowel merger.
No, I mean that is another chicken phenomenon. But no, this is the how when you ask anyone who's eaten anything unusual, they tell you it tastes like chicken. So I think any unusual accent, people will kind of just pluck at straws and say, "Oh yeah, it sounds like Irish," or "It sounds West Country."
Exactly. That's just
we just go for the closest thing that we know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it was interesting because I experienced it with your Roticity video
with the samples,
where you were reading what would general Australian sound like if it was rhotic. It sounds West Country, and I'm thinking, right, okay, I'm experiencing the thing now where I'm just saying it sounds West Country, and I'm saying try to hear Australian in that, and it was really difficult.
And like in that's crazy because I could only hear it just felt dissonant for me because it's so familiar. But like, I also did the broad sample of like, Carnarvon and Meeketh are only about 8 hours drive apart. And it sounds like, I don't even know how to categorise that. It sounds a bit Irish because of the fronted start. But like, we inherited the fronted start from southeastern England and like East Anglia and that. So it's not even like historically traceable as to why they sound like the things they sound like. It's just a mess.
Changing the subject a bit, did you grow up speaking and I can't remember the name of the Aboriginal language that you were...
There's Badimaya.
Yeah.
And I grew up, so my family have been in that region since before there was a town. It was just us farming sheep since the 1880s.
Wow.
And so we've been sort of in the same region as that Yamaji mob for that whole time. And it used to be just the Yamajis, but then as time has gone on, finer grained distinctions have emerged between Badimaya and Whadjuk and Mulgana and all that sort of thing, depending on what like language they spoke. In the early days, it was all just homogenous Yamaji. They didn't make internal distinctions, but as years have gone on, those distinctions have emerged. And it's eventuated that we're situated on Badimaya land, and all of the like... We've always had contact with them, and it hasn't always been friendly. There have been some dark times in the history, but in the last like half a century or so, it's been friendly relations. And I'd say maybe a bit more than that, but we've gotten a lot of language from them in our day-to-day life. Like there are places on my like family's property which we don't own, but it's like a pastoral lease that works funny in Australia. But we've got places on there that we call like Jinna, Yak and Yarra. There's places nearby. There's like Windamurra, Wandanong, Meeline. But there's all these places where the name of the place comes from Badimaya, depending on either what it was originally called or some word they came up with in the moment. And then we've also got words for animals, which is the most interesting thing to me, is especially my dad and like older people refer to animals by their Yamaji names, because when they come over in the 1800s, they're not going to be there and open up a textbook and be like, oh, this is a spotted crested robin. They're going to be like, what's that one? And then Yamaji fella goes, Nyingari. And so they go, right, that's a Nyingari. And that's just how they learnt all the names of the animals. And that's been passed down to the modern day.
Oh, wonderful.
So I grew up around Badimaya. It was always around me, and people did speak it every here and there. Nowadays, most people who speak the language have passed away. And my dad and granddad and all the older people remember in their childhood people speaking Badimaya left and right. There was people... They would be mustering sheep, and there would be the workers around them singing in Badimaya while they're doing it. But nowadays, when it gets to my time, there's only 3 of us left who can speak it. We was originally 2. I was originally 1, but we're working away with the local language centres to sort of get more revitalisation on the way.
And where are those language centres based?
Geraldton is the main one. The Bundiara Irawonga Language Centre is based in Geraldton, and that deals with sort of all around the Midwest language groups. So all of the Khartoum languages from a bit north of Perth to Shark Bay kind of area, and also a fair way inland from that. So not with any of the central desert languages, but with all of the Midwest languages, sort of north of the Southwest and south of the Kimberley. That's in their jurisdiction.
Cool. Something I noticed... that seems to be a kind of Sprachbund feature of Aboriginal languages, is that they like their liquids. So
they do like their liquids.
Lots of R's.
Well, there's all the different... Like in Badimaya, there is a meaningful compulsory distinction between and and if you can't distinguish those 4 laterals, then you can't speak proper.
Wow.
And it's like that in a lot of them. They've all got... You've got like the series of approximants which don't have a lot of distinctions, like the w, y, and r. They're like the 3 that you don't get much more contrast than that. There's also r, which every now and then r and r are distinguished from one another as they are in Badimaya. But you've got the laterals are kind of in a separate series. Laterals sort of stand on their own alongside nasals and stops, whereas the rest of the approximants sort of float around a bit more.
It's fascinating that can happen, isn't it? And do they don't have voice stops? Is that right? Or pure voice stuff?
In most of them, voicing is just allophonic. There's not much of a distinction, and it honestly depends on the region, like the regional accent, whether or not they're predominantly voiced or voiceless. I was telling you about loanwords from Yamaji languages into my dialect, and like Australian English, we've got a bunch of loanwords from. What's very interesting, actually, is it follows the pattern of colonization, in that the words that are most, like the Aboriginal words that are most embedded in Australian English are from over east. All the words like boomerang, kangaroo, billabong, what did it be, Karajong, I think they're all borrowed from like Eastern languages, and even though we still use them in the West, they're just not local to us. We should have had local loanwords for them, but we don't, because we've already got other people's loanwords.
Right.
There's one which is balai, and you get this a bit throughout like Western Australia in a few different places and communities where people will say balai if something like goes wrong, and it's a Whadjuk word. I think the root would be something like bala, which means alert, and then the yi is a verbalizer at the end. So bala would be alert, like look out. And it's like my dad will use it all the time. If like someone falls off the motorbike or something falls off a windmill, he'd say bala, and everyone would go look out. It'd be like a heads up kind of thing.
So it we've just got
bala coming in by itself, and everyone knows what it means.
Everyone, as in even urban people?
Not urban people, they miss out. They miss out on all the fun linguistics. They're sat there in their cities speaking standard English and being literate, which is an incredibly lame thing to do. My dad and my granddad can read. If they really put their minds to it, they can read and write.
In the town that I grew up in, which on the internet I like to call Jafton, because Jafton is an acronym, as I explained in that video. I'm not sure if I'll say it explicitly here.
No, I think you can.
But just a fuck ton of nothing is Jafton.
Yeah, I didn't see that one, so I've been trying to Google it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. But so in Jafton English, as I call it on YouTube, we've got a lot of substrate influence from the Yamaji languages, and that extends to kind of a made-up singular dual plural distinction in our pronouns. And you get that in like them twos, which is a crazy construction to apply the plural to two, and to say them twos as the like third person dual pronoun.
Yeah. But it's interesting that, isn't it? If you have like a long history of bilingualism, and then you get something that one language can do and the other one can't, people kind of feel that loss of like, well, what's the dual in English then?
What am I supposed to put in? There's a hole in this language. Yeah.
And there's an interesting feature of African American English and Irish, where the habitual. Yeah. So yeah. And Irish
habitual B.
Irish, even non-Irish speaking Irish people, of which there's sadly quite a lot, will kind of various different parts of Ireland have come up with different solutions for the he bees or
that's that kind of thing fascinates me. That like a substrate language kind of creating a wider dialect feature. That's fascinating to me.
Huge thanks to Dave for showing up and for talking to me about stuff, and for just reaching out, and we made a video and now it's up on both of our channels. So if you want to see the rest of our conversation, go look at Dave's channel.
I would also like to give a special thanks
to all the members of the channel. We've got Velocihog, woo! We got Connor, yippee! We got Bailey, woo! We got Dr. Jeff, woohoo! We got Milan Kundere, woo! We got Danielle B, ooh! We got Jacob Tucker, woo! And we got Albert Miller. Thanks to everyone for giving me money and supporting the channel so much, because it's been, I tell you what, it's been a good help lately. And then we've also just thank you to Dave for doing a whole collaboration with me. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Schrodinger's dog. Their PayPal doesn't work, so they can't be a channel member, but they did buy me a rum and coke, so good on them.